Hey guys, welcome back to Release the Craftin. Priscilla here with another episode of Storycraft. And you guys, I'm really excited today because I have a really fun story that I just happened to come across while trying to find stories for this week's Storycraft, because I wanted to do something a little bit out of the box before I got back into doing requests. And this one came up. So, here we are. We're doing it. I've never heard this story before. So it was new to me today, so I hope that it is also new to you as well. But we're doing the Romanian fairy tale, The Voice of Death. Bum, bum, bum. So this one actually was in the Andrew Lang Red Fairy book, and I have a bunch of them in a digital format. My ultimate life goal is to get them all in a physical format, but they're expensive sometimes, which is rude to me, but also it's fine. I'll manage it. I'll figure it out one day, but I have them all digitally, so I was scrolling through trying to be like, what's a good story I could tell? And then I came across this one, and I was like, I've never heard this, and it's a little bit more folktale-y than fairy tale-ish, but yeah, it's a ride. We're gonna go on it together. So our story takes place in the way long ago with a man who is never named, so we're not gonna name him either, because that's how things go. And he was originally a poor man, and one day he decided he was tired of being poor, which, brother, same. But also, he decided that he was going to start praying and wishing and basically doing anything possible to become rich, because he was super tired of being poor. He didn't just want to be well off or average. He wanted to be filthy, stinking rich. And you know what, you guys? I know that we all grew into disillusioned adults who decided that wishing upon a star did not actually yield to us the dreams that we were promised, but for this guy, it did. Because he actually became super wealthy, super wealthy, to the point where he never had to work another day in his life. And, he managed to get married, settle down, have the life of his dreams. And he had so much money that, he was basically the 1% of the time. And he got to the point where he was like, well, it would be horrible to work so hard to get all this money to just die like a regular person. What the heck? That's awful. What a waste, right? Gross. So he decides to go look for a place where there is no death. So, he takes a couple bags of gold. He leaves his wife and children behind. He's like, see you guys later, I'm on a mission. And just starts out on foot to fuck off around the country to find a place without death. And every time he came to a new town, he was like, hey, do people die here? And you know how, there's some questions that make people look at you a little crazy? I am 100% certain that this is at, the top of the list. It's, in the top 5 questions of sentences that you could say, questions you could ask people you've never met before that would make people look at you crazy. It's right under there with, is water wet? Top 5. So he says, hey, do people die here? And people will be like, yeah, of course, totally. People definitely die here, you fucking weirdo. And he'd be like, all right, I'm out. Here's my gold. Gold rich guy rolling out. And he'd go to the next country. And he'd get there and he'd be like, hey, do people die here? And they'd be like, hey, we don't actually speak your language, but yeah, people die here, just in case you're wondering. And he'd be like, oh, well, that's balls. And he'd leave and he'd go to the next place. And he would do this. He did this for years, you guys, traveling from place to place, city to city, country to country. He probably crossed an ocean at some point, looking for a place without death. And, he didn't actually find it. Somebody told him. Somebody was like, hey, yeah, actually people die here. If you can see, right behind me, there's a funeral, a graveyard, the whole 9 yards, right behind me. But there is a place I've heard of where people don't die. Nobody ever dies. So, taking directions from this strange person in this strange foreign land, he goes all the way back home, retrieves his family, and is like, hey, I think I got it. I got the place where nobody dies. And they're like, oh, we forgot about you. But we're also so wealthy that, we didn't really care to move on. But I guess now that you're back, it is technically your money, even though you just left. So we'll go with you. So they go to this new land, following the directions of this stranger, and when they get there, the guy runs up to the first person he sees, and he's like, hey, do people die here? And they're like, no, no, nobody ever dies here. And yeah, none of us know death. And he's like, okay, but is it like super gross overpopulated because there's tons of people and nobody ever dies? And the guy, the citizen of the country without death, is like, no, actually, there's not gross overpopulation because nobody ever dies. Nobody ever dies, right? Like, we're all living for quite a long time, happily and whatever. But occasionally, people just wander away when they hear the voice of death calling to them. And the guy's like, what do you mean the voice of death? It just calls to them? They don't see who's calling to them? And the guy goes, nope, they never see death, but they hear him calling, and then they follow his call, and they disappear and are never seen again. We don't see them ever again. We don't even find their bodies, so we're just assuming they didn't actually die. And the guy's like, yeah, okay. That makes sense. That's logical. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. We're living here, family. We're setting up shop here. I have a bunch of money. Because for some reason, money still has value in the land without death. But we're living here, and what we'll just do, because I'm a big brain guy with big brain guy ideas, is we will just, when death calls to us, ignore him. If you don't answer the voice, if you don't answer the call, you never die. So he tells this to his family, and his family's like, yeah, okay, you moved us around the world for this. Cool, yeah. And I totally believe that you're not going through some sort of, like, mental health crisis right now or anything. So, his family and him together happily settle down in their new country, in their new place that they bought with all their fancy gold, and the guy is finally able to just sit back like a freaking miser on all of his riches and wealth and, you know, be content in the knowledge that he will never die, and if death does happen to call him, he's just isn't going to pay attention. And they live like this for years. They actually have a very nice, quiet, content life. Turns out the country without death is actually really chill. The people are all super sharing and giving, which, like, this guy doesn't really understand because he's sitting in his house like a miser with all of his wealth. And all of his family are also all holed up in their house with all their, like, expensive coats and clothing and jewels and, you know, whatever, like, medieval equivalent to electronics would have been. They have all the cool stuff. So they're all, like, content to just keep to themselves, live in their house, do the things, and, you know, enjoy their life with prosperity. Until one day they're all sitting down at dinner, and they're just chatting, having a good time, when suddenly the man, his wife, just jumps up, and she's like, oh, I'm coming, hold on. And she gets up, and she goes and she grabs her fur coat, puts that on, and then, you know, starts to head out the door, and her husband grabs her, and he's like, hey, what the actual fuck? What are you doing? And she's like, oh, I hear somebody calling me. I'm going to go see what they want. And he's like, do you remember when I told you that if you heard a disembodied voice calling you to just fucking ignore it? That's the voice of death. We're not listening to death. Go sit down at the table. Why are you so crazy? And his wife's like, oh, yeah, I remember you saying that, but, like, can't you hear that voice? I just want to see what they want. I'll be right back. And he's like, no. I don't hear that voice. It's only you, which means ignore it. Sit down. Finish your soup. So she's like, okay. And she sits down and has her soup in her fur coat, which, like, mad appreciate, because she was like, I put it on. I might as well just have my soup. And she does, and she's sitting there. And then she's like, yeah, no, they keep calling me. Like, I think they really need me. So his wife again gets up and she starts to dash out to the door. And the husband goes after her. He grabs her coat again and he's like, hey, crazy. We don't listen to the voice of death. That's how we live forever. And she's like, yeah, no, I really want to go. And he's like, no, you can't go. So his wife, in a pro-toddler move, you know how, like, kids will immediately go limp and dead weight when they want to have, like, a tantrum. So she does that. She throws her arms up and she goes dead weight. She slides right out of her coat. She dashes out of the door. Her husband starts to run after her, but then is like, you know what? Never mind. Kids, your mom? Shenanigans. She's on shenanigans. She's a silly dum-dum who ran off after the voice of death. So, the husband goes to close the door. All that can be seen is the wife disappearing into the dark distance. Words are really hard. And calling out, I'm coming. So the husband shuts the door. He goes back to the dinner table. He's like, yeah, you know, we're just going to reconcile this. It's fine. Your mom wanted to die. If that's what she wants, I'm not going to get between her and death. Like, that's it. But for you guys, if you hear the voice of death, do not answer. And the kids are like, yeah, cool, Dad, we actually don't care. Or know you that well because you just disappeared for the formative years of our life, so we don't really care. So, more time passes. Days, weeks, months, years pass by. Nothing happens. Everyone is quiet and content. The father manages to repair his shitty relationship with his children, and he goes out one day, just as usual, goes to visit the local barber, get a nice shave and a haircut, and while he's sitting there, his face all soapy up, he's like, hey, I'm not going. Do you hear me? I am not going. And the barber's like, so did you not want a shave, bro? Like, what? And he's like, no, I am telling you once and for all that I will not go to you, so you can just get the fuck on, because I'm not doing it. And the barber's like, do I need to leave you alone for a second, guy? Like, can we just wash the shaving cream off and you can just sit and think about, like, this? I know haircuts and shaves are, like, big choices. And the guy's like, I absolutely will not go. And I'm telling you, if you do not leave me alone, it's gonna be bad for you. It's gonna be so bad. Like, I'm gonna fucking fight you if you don't leave me alone. And the barber's like, I'm so confused right now because you came to my shop and I just feel like maybe you're being openly hostile, but you came to me. And the guy's like, hey, give me your razor. I'll do it myself. So the guy's like, all right, yeah, no problem, bro. So the barber gives him the razor because he's like, I don't want no smoke. You want to shave yourself? Shave yourself. And the man jumps up and runs out the door, and he's like, I'm going to go teach him a lesson once and for all. And when I'm done, nobody's ever going to die again. And the barber's like, that's my razor, guy. Those are expensive in this time and in the present day and age as well, for some freaking reason. And the guy runs out because he's going to go fight death. He is 100% convinced he's going to go fight death right now. And the barber runs after him because he's like, hey, that's my razor. You actually need to give that back to me. And they run all across the town. The man has like soap and shaving cream like just flying off his face, and he's shouting into the day, and people are watching him run by, and they're like, who the fuck is he talking to? Why is he running with a razor? This man is clearly unhinged. And there goes the barber trying to get his razor back right behind him. What's going on? What a crazy day. They run all the way through the town. They run out of the town. They run out into the wilderness, up a steep hill, and when they get to the top of the hill, the man just continues on over the ledge, right off, like a lemming, right off the cliff. And they never see him again. And the barber's like, my razor! As it goes down. The barber did not jump over the edge. He wasn't compelled to lemming himself to an unfortunate demise. But it seems like, in the end, the voice of death managed to get him, too. Either way. And the barber goes back home, tells everybody in the village what happened, because they're like, bro, what the hell? And he's like, I know, the craziest thing just happened. And the people in the town are like, well, let's go see the pit, because that must be where everybody who's ever heard the voice of death has gone to. So they all go out there to go see this pit. There's nothing in there. There's no bodies. There's nothing at the bottom. It's just a regular, mountainside and a drop. And the people don't know what happened to the people who heard the voice of death. If they went over the ledge, where did they go? But from that day on, since that man went off the ledge to go fight death, the people in the village, that country, the country without death, people just started dying like normal. Death returned in full force. There wasn't a plague or anything. I'm not that full of force. But, death came back. And people just started dying like normal. And that's the end of the story. Which, would be kind of unsatisfying. But any story where, the 1% just falls to their demise in a mysterious way, doesn't sit too bad with me. In all honesty, I'm okay with it. But also, I just thought this story was really, particularly interesting. Because this man goes out of his way to avoid death. But in the end, nobody can avoid death. Even if you have all the money in the world. Even if you find all the fancy things and go to the fancy places. It doesn't matter. And this man was so obsessed with avoiding death that he forgot to live with the money that he worked so hard to get. So he had all this ample opportunity to have a life full of meaning and riches, but instead was so worried about dying that he squandered away his wealth. It's worth nothing. I'm sure the villagers were like, hey, that guy had a lot of money, and they ransacked the shit out of his house. Those poor children probably had to defend him off. I don't know how old they are in the story. It's not really mentioned. But, like, they didn't get to keep that wealth. You know, that wealth got redistributed. And, yeah, it just seems like a happy ending for something that's sort of a little bittersweet and melancholy. Because, you know, it's about death. But I also just, like, kind of wonder what the voice of death sounds like and what it would take. If you knew that death had a voice and would call to you, what do you think death would sound like trying to call you? Like, what would get you out of the house to go pursue the voice of death? Because clearly for the wife, it was just people needing her. Like, she just felt so compelled because somebody needed her. And, you know, that speaks a lot to her personal character. And I don't know what Death was telling the man. Clearly they were, like, having, like, an epic exchange. Like, Death was talking mad shit for him to be like, I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna fight you with this barber's razor. And that was enough to get the man all the way out the house. So yeah, I just kind of wonder, like, whose voice would it be? What would they have to say to get you out? Like, that's what this story makes me think of. And, you know, the way that it's sort of, like, symbolic of death sort of calling you home. Because that's kind of how that works, right? So yeah, I don't know. Just an odd tale, an interesting tale, a satisfying tale if it comes to how we deal with the 1%. And, in conclusion, that is my story. If there's a story that you want to hear me tell on this channel, yeah, leave it in the comments below. I will add it to my roster of stories. I'm always taking requests, and I'm always happy to do a request. So yeah, definitely leave that down there. Otherwise, you're going to get more weird stories like this one, where, you know, a man tries to fight death, which is admittedly pretty freaking cool. And I might do a couple more, because there's some more stories that are sort of like this that I already know of people who try to pursue immortality and how that works out for them. So maybe I'll do another one or two of these just because I'm on that, like, tangent right now, I guess. It's morbid, I don't know why. Like, yeah, that's where my brain is. But that's gonna be all for me. So if you made it to the end of the video, I appreciate your faces. Let me know your thoughts and comments in the comment section down below, and I will catch you guys all in the next one. Until then, happy crafting. Bye!